Coming up on Your Vote 2012, it's the economy, stupid. As Americans prepare to cast their votes in what the candidates claim is the most important election of our lifetime, the country's debt, its deficit, and its stubbornly high unemployment rate are expected to play a determining role in the outcome of the November vote. On this special World Channel broadcast, we'll have a battleground report from Florida on how the economy is affecting voting intentions in the Sunshine State.
I don't like their, tearing each other down. I wish they'd spend more money and time on their campaigns to talk about the true, real issues that the American people are dealing with today.
We'll face the facts about the nation's economic challenges with Frank Sesno of George Washington University. And we'll bring you a special panel discussion on whether the economy really is the big issue in Your Vote 2012. I'm Celeste Headley. All that coming up next, right here on World Channel.
Major funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
As Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, Joe Biden and Paul Ryan crisscross the country in search of votes, as candidates for the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the governor's mansions in 11 states and 2 territories slug it out ahead of Election Day, conventional wisdom and the opinion polls suggest there's one issue that'll weigh heavily in the minds of voters as they prepare to cast their ballots: the economy. The nation's sluggish employment market, its debt and deficit, and the competing visions for bringing the U.S. out of recession are widely considered the single biggest issue in Your Vote 2012. So, how are things playing out in at least one of the battleground states where the election will be decided? Correspondent Anna Sale of WNYC Public Radio reports from the all-important I-4 corridor in Florida.
The West Tampa Sandwich Shop is something of a barometer of the Florida economy. The owners of this bustling Cuban restaurant say business is better than it was during the depths of the recession, but the recovery has been patchy. Construction workers used to make up a sizable chunk of the customers here. Not anymore.
Right now, the construction business go down, and all these customers go.
Larry Scarinci, who's worked in construction for nearly a decade, says times were good for him during Florida's housing boom. But nowadays, he says he struggles to make ends meet.
You think you're going to get on your feet just to fall back down. I don't think that it's growing like they say. I don't see it anyway. I mean, I don't know other people's business, but I'm not having enough 40-hour weeks for me to say that things are getting better.
Scarinci says he's voted for Democrats and Republicans in the past, but he hasn't decided who he'll support in November. Economists say the construction industry continues to be held back by weakness in Florida's housing market. The state soared in the real estate-fueled boom a few years ago, but while the number of foreclosures nationally fell 10% over last year, Florida's foreclosure rate ticked higher. This subdivision outside of Tampa gives a sense of the mixed housing market here. There are 31 houses for sale, but most of them are under contract. But nearly 90% of those are short sales, meaning the sale price is less than what the owner owes to the bank.
Half of the people who carry mortgages have negative equity in their home.
Floridians facing the prospect of foreclosure come to seek advice from an attorney specializing in real estate at this workshop organized by a local nonprofit. Tampa resident Candy Gonzalez and her husband ran into trouble with their mortgage payments late last year after she lost her job. While she says she'll probably vote for Mitt Romney this election, she feels neither presidential candidate is offering solutions that help her.
I don't like their, tearing each other down. I wish they'd spend more money and time on their campaigns to talk about the true, real issues that the American people are dealing with today. The middle-class people are carrying a lot of load for the American people.
While the foreclosure rate in Florida remains high by national standards, there is a mood of optimism among some that the state's economy may have bottomed out. Low mortgage rates are helping home prices move higher, and unemployment in Florida has dropped by nearly 2 percentage points in the last year to 8.8%, a vast improvement over 11.4% in 2010.
I think things are picking up here. I think things are doing better. I think the president has had an effect on that. I think some of the stimulus dollars that he has deployed here in the state of Florida, and in my city in particular, have been very, very positive impacts. From my perspective, things have been bad, they are getting better, and we are moving forward. We are not looking behind us.
But Tampa Bay Times business columnist Robert Trigo says much of Florida's new hiring remains in familiar low-wage jobs.
It's an uneven improvement. You're seeing some pockets of the economy that are doing much better. Tourism, for example, has rebounded quite nicely, and despite the fact that economic developers might have wished other parts of the economy that pay better or had a more 21st century feel to it would be improving faster than tourism. It's actually tourism that's forming the basis of our rebound.
The majority of Florida's new jobs in the last year have come in the restaurant industry, healthcare, and services that help people look for employment. Signs of economic green shoots are hard to find at this kitchen, which serves lunch to Tampa's homeless. Tampa Bay has the highest rate of homelessness of any metro area in the country. The National Alliance to End Homelessness finds nearly 60 in every 10,000 people here have nowhere to live. In Tampa, demand for social services is unrelenting.
5 years ago, I could take someone off the street and we could get their life back within a week or two, get them a job. Nowadays, it's like they can be applying for 2-3 weeks in a row and getting no. It's not as easy to get a job, which of course discourages them.
A few miles away, Metropolitan Ministries offers services like a food bank, thrift store, and job center to the ranks of Tampa's homeless, unemployed, and newly poor. Requests for food were up 6% over the last year. The center also offers temporary shelter to homeless families. Work is underway to add 50 new housing units, doubling the amount of accommodations. Resident Delaney Jimenez was laid off from her job at a Medicare call center. She wants the candidates in the presidential election to focus on creating jobs.
Some of us need help. So if they can look into doing something about that or getting jobs, more jobs for us, then we'll be more than happy with that.
Meanwhile, the political debate over how to solve America's economic woes has turned a spotlight on one of Florida's largest voting blocs, seniors. At Tampa's Barksdale Senior Center, retirees are following a battle being waged on Florida's airwaves over which presidential candidate will protect Medicare.
You paid into Medicare for years. Every paycheck. Now when you need it, Obama has cut $716 billion from Medicare. Why? To pay for Obamacare. So now the money you paid for your guaranteed health care is going to a massive new government program that's not for you.
3.4 million Florida residents received Medicare benefits in 2011. Obama supporter Angelina Valenti worries about any proposed reforms to the program.
I think elderly people, as they get older, most of them are afraid of changes, and I feel that way. I'd like it to stay the same.
An August poll shows 48% of Florida voters believe President Obama is more likely to protect Medicare, compared to 40% for Mitt Romney. K.R. Lombardia also opposes changes to Medicare. He says he'll vote Republican this election.
I don't care if Mickey Mouse ran in the Republican Party. I'm not going to vote for Obama. I'm not going to, my brother-in-law hates me, but he votes straight Democrat. I've got away from that. I don't do that anymore.
Lombardia, like many Florida voters, says he hasn't detected an improvement in the economy yet. After seeing things fall so far, so fast, many voters say they simply want to see a return to the good times.
I don't know who's to blame, and it would be nice if things got better. To be quite frank with you, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican that gets the ball rolling, just so long as it gets rolling, I don't care.
For Your Vote 2012, I'm Anna Sale in Tampa, Florida.
You can see lots more of Anna Sale's reporting from Florida and some of the other battleground states online. Visit WNYC's politics blog at itsafreecountry.org. You'll find reports there from all over the nation, and there's plenty of opportunity to join the conversation. And you can join our conversation by heading over to Twitter. We want your questions and comments about the economy and the other major issues this election year. You can use the hashtag YV2012. That's YV2012, and we'll feature some of your thoughts here and at our website at worldchannel.org. Still to come on Your Vote 2012, our special panel discussion on the economy, its future, and the role it's playing this election year. But before you can debate solutions, you need some facts. And for those, we turn to veteran journalist Frank Sesno of George Washington University. He heads a new initiative there called Face the Facts USA and joins me now. Frank, thanks for being with me.
Celeste, thanks for having me.
We hear over and over that the economy is the #1 driver in terms of people's choices in the presidential election. Is that the case?
Absolutely, and in this election, more than we've seen in any election that I've covered in the last 25 years or 30 years. Here's the problem. The problem is that this economic dislocation has hit anybody who works, who saves, who owns a home, or who saves for retirement. 60% of the country think the country's on the wrong track. Well over half the country, by orders of magnitude, when you look at the internals of these polling, say jobs and the economy is the first issue of this election and the first thing they're going to cast their ballot on.
And I think that people often, when they talk about the economy, they're really talking about jobs, and some of the polling is a little confusing. You have people who think that Romney is going to be better in terms of jobs, on the jobs issue, and then you have people, the same people, saying they think Barack Obama will be better at improving the overall economy. What exactly does that mean?
Well, what it means, look, let's get to the bottom line here. The country really is split. There's no runaway in either of these candidates in terms of the confidence from the electorate yet as to who will do a better job. I think that reflects just how deep-seated the problems are, and the country knows that. Here's a fact, and this is a big one. The long-term unemployed, people who've been out of work for 6 months or more, peaked at about close to 6 million in 2011. That number's down somewhat now, about 5.3 million in the July numbers. But it still represents 40% of the workforce that's out of work right now. There's another number, 8.2 million, I think it is, who are underemployed. That is to say, involuntarily working less than they want to. People see how deep this problem is. It defies simple solutions. There will be lots of sound bites out there, but I think it's one of the reasons we see the country very much split on it right now.
I think we're also going to be talking a lot about Medicare, especially with the choice of Paul Ryan as Mitt Romney's running mate. And it turns out that this issue, which may have been a strong point, economic issues might have been Romney's strong point, it may make him a little bit vulnerable, do you think, when he starts talking about Social Security and Medicare?
Well, I think Social Security and Medicare are tied back to the issue of jobs because your job security then reflects your health care security. And it all ties into a larger conversation, really the deepest part of the conversation this campaign embraces, which is the size and the scope of the federal government. What should it be doing? So Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan now are firmly aligned on the less is more school of thought, that Medicare should be fundamentally reformed, that it should be in many cases, at least in Ryan's prescription, turned over to the states, turned back to the voters, individuals themselves in terms of a voucher-based system. That couldn't be farther from where Barack Obama comes down on the issue. So I think this is going to be a very profound area of confrontation for the two. Right now, and especially among seniors, Medicare and that other program you mentioned, Social Security, have broad support. So this is going to be a very interesting series of debates to watch.
Well, what about the deficit? We hear a lot of the deficit. Every time you hear a campaign speech, a stump speech, many of the Republicans and the GOP side are going to be talking about bringing that down. Is that something that's actually motivating voters?
Never has. The deficit has been in and out of the headlines since Ronald Reagan ran for president, and then under Reagan there were huge deficits for a time. It's been something that's been a rallying cry with the public and with the politicians, but it never seems to drive people to cast a ballot for or against a party. Now, in the case of Romney and Ryan, they will be making this a very central component of their larger strategy, that the government is overextended, that we cannot afford what we're doing, that we're mortgaging our future. In the roughly 4 minutes that you and I have had this conversation, the fact is that we will have added about $10 million to the deficit, $2.5 million every minute. So whether it drives voters, big question. Whether it will drive the debate, no doubt.
And the last issue, of course, would have to be taxes. We have two very different philosophies and approaches to taxes. Do we have a clear understanding of both of these candidates and what they might propose in terms of tax reform?
Well, pretty close. Barack Obama has said that, earn over $250,000, your taxes need to go up. Mitt Romney has said that taxes need to be cut, but he's a little looser with the specifics, I think, so far than Barack Obama. Now with Paul Ryan on that ticket, there are going to be some real requests and very serious pressure points for more specifics. Again, though, the contrast between the two candidates will be stark, and the facts speak for themselves in terms of where the money has come from, how short the actual revenues are from the money that the government is spending. So taxes front and center.
Frank Sesno, many thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You can learn much more about Face the Facts USA. That's Frank's new initiative at George Washington University by visiting it online. The web address is facethefactsusa.org. You can sign up there for their Fact of the Day email, watch videos about the critical issues this election cycle, and join the conversation. Again, it's all at facethefactsusa.org. So to our panel discussion now, and joining me here in Washington, Neil King, politics reporter with the Wall Street Journal. From our studios in New York, Alex Perrine, a writer on politics for Salon.com, and Dylan Glenn, former special assistant to President George W. Bush. He's now with the hedge fund Guggenheim Partners. Thanks all for joining me.
Pleasure, Celeste.
You know, we just heard Frank Sesno talk about what a stark choice we have in this election between the two candidates. Do we have enough specifics in knowing Romney's policies and his philosophies about the economy to know how stark this choice is?
Well, I mean, it's a stylistic starkness, right? This is now an election about the size of government, about the role of government. Mitt Romney wanting to roll back the scale of government, the importance of it in the entitlement system, wanting to enhance, the role of the private sector. And Barack Obama arguing that we can't go back to what he claims to be the policies of the decade before under Bush, and obviously putting forward various specifics on wanting to increase the tax burden on the wealthy and do various things to build the economy, but more in a kind of government-centric way than what the vision that Mitt Romney has. Does he have a lot of specifics out there? Not really. I don't think so. I mean, that's the trick with going with Paul Ryan as his choice for VP is that Paul Ryan has a lot of specifics.
Right.
And now, there's been a certain muddling that's gone on the side of Mitt Romney about to what extent he's going to ascribe, and hold to what are Paul Ryan's specifics.
Or whether he'll distance himself completely.
Right.
So Dylan, let me ask you, I mean, many Americans still connect or blame the current economic situation on the George W. Bush years. So how does Romney forge his own path, distance himself, if he wants to, from Paul Ryan's budget, and distance himself from the administration of George W. Bush?
Well, I think it's important to note, first and foremost, that this president has had the helm of this economy for now 3 years, moving into 4. And so I'm not sure if I agree with that assertion. And secondly, I would add that...
let me stop you for just a second. It's not whether you agree with it or not, but that's what most Americans think.
Well, I would suggest to you that the president, and I'm sure that Governor Romney and Paul Ryan will make this case as well, that, of course, the president's had the helm of this economy now for the better part of 3 years. He also had the control of both houses of Congress for the first 2 years of this presidency. And so I think, as people begin to look at what the president has done, what his policies that he chose to enact have done, they'll be able to draw more clear conclusions as we get through this campaign. With respect to what Governor Romney and Paul Ryan hope to do, I think the conversation really is one about what your previous guests already outlined. What type of government do you want? Do you want one that's more intrusive, or do you want one that's less intrusive? Do you want a more pro-growth set of policy assumptions and policies in place versus what we've had, with all due respect, over the course of the past 3 months, 3 years, which is less growth coming out of a recession than we've ever had really in the history, or recent history at least, in our memory. And so I think that'll be the stark choice. And Governor Romney has put forward and will continue to outline some plans to put us on a pro-growth path. One point in particular would be radically reforming the tax code and reducing rates. As well as broadening the base of taxpayers and figuring out how to get this economy going again.
Okay, so Alex Perrine, you just heard Dylan mention taxes, and this seems to be one of the starkest choices between these two candidates. In fact, most Americans, though, even in the Republican Party, think it's a good idea to raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans in order to bridge the deficit here. So explain this difference on tax policy between Romney and Obama.
Yeah, I think if you want to look at one of the biggest reasons why Mitt Romney is having difficulty beating the president in a time when it should be easy to beat an incumbent president, is that the sort of priority of the Republican Party is still at this point reforming the tax code to make it arguably more regressive, to cut taxes, to cut the tax burden of the wealthy, and basically to try to increase growth by slashing corporate taxes and income taxes on rich people. That's a set of policy proposals that is very popular with elite Republicans, and one that is not hugely popular with Americans as a whole, and I think Americans rightly don't really think that's a great method to boost job growth.
Well, Neil, when people say, and everyone does, that the economy is their number one issue when they're going to the ballot box, what economy are they talking about? Are they talking about jobs? Are they talking about taxes? Are they talking about Social Security? Are they talking about foreclosures? What are they talking about?
I think they're talking about what's just right around them and what's going on within their own family. And do they have a job? Is their job paying well? What's the feeling in their neighborhood? What's the feeling in their state? And, it's a fascinating thing because Mitt Romney went into this election, it was going to be a referendum on Barack Obama and the state of the economy. I think it's going to be increasingly less the central focus of this campaign, particularly because Mitt Romney has decided to take on as his partner somebody who's about a lot of other things. So this has now become a debate about entitlement programs, about Medicare, about
That's a really hard fight to win. I mean, and let me take that to you, Dylan, because Medicare seems to be an odd issue that Romney is now stuck talking about since he chose Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan's program in terms of using Medicare vouchers is not entirely popular, especially among people that would normally wholeheartedly support Romney, the older white Americans.
I disagree. This will be a conversation about the economy. The economy is the context in which voters will go to the polls and think about this election. And they'll think about the fact that the president promised them that, if we spent $800 billion on a stimulus, that their unemployment would never get above 8%. And, of course, it hasn't been below 8%.
But let me move to Alex really quickly. Let's talk about jobs because the polling on this is a little confusing. You have more Americans thinking that Romney would do a better job at improving jobs. And we just heard Frank talking all about the millions of people who've been unemployed for more than 6 months, the long-term unemployed. But a larger portion of Americans think Obama is better at improving the overall economy. Explain how this could be the case.
One reason for the disparity might be that, a lot of the groups for whom the unemployment crisis is sort of a reality and not just sort of something that they hear about in the news, a lot of those groups are younger people and minorities who are definitely more likely to be supporting Obama to begin with. So I think some of the data might be people who are actually more economically comfortable thinking that the Republican would have a better job creating jobs for other people. I imagine for a lot of people for whom this has been a particularly hard time, they sort of get the sense that President Obama and the Democrats are more on their side, so to speak. But honestly, Romney, he might get decent polling data for saying he'll help the job situation, but I don't really think that he can point to any sort of coherent plan, a jobs plan of any kind. And at least Obama, he had a jobs plan. He had a couple that were just sort of sat in Congress and that weren't acted on. So there is a disparity there in at least what has been proposed. And it's still hardly anything can be acted on as long as Congress remains this frozen. But I think people sort of see that the Republicans don't necessarily have a great jobs plan on offer.
Well, let me wrap this up with you, Neil King, because a lot of these things that we're talking about are things that are very popular to talk about in Washington, right, but don't necessarily resonate among the average voter. When you talk about the President Obama having control of Congress, that doesn't necessarily resonate with the average American voter, right?
In the end, it's about feel, it's about who they think they can trust, who they think has, is out for them, to protect them, a certain empathy factor. And the real problem that Romney faces right now is that on all those measures, we did a poll at the Wall Street Journal where we asked on about 10 different things. The only thing that he beat Obama on was he better, who's better equipped at handling controlling the economy. But commander-in-chief, who has the better experience to be in the White House, who's better at looking after people like me, et cetera, all those things Obama way outscored Romney on. So Romney is now trying to do kind of a big intellectual, what size of government do we want, or who's better, what technical ways are we going to fix the economy, when he still hasn't gotten close to winning the, which guy do I trust and which guy do I feel, more aligned with. Yeah, and it continues to be his biggest problem, and I'm not sure whether making this a big choice election about really big topics is necessarily going to get him out of that hole.
Dylan Glenn and Alex Perrine joined us from New York, and Neil King here in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And finally, most people aren't sure just how the economy is doing. I mean, you've got the feeling in your gut. Are you less worried now than you were 4 years ago? And you've got the balance in your retirement account or your checking account. But every time we get an unemployment report, we get two conflicting analyses. This proves the economy is sinking into the mire, and this proves we're on the upswing. We simply have more spin than information right now, and where the economy is concerned, that's dangerous. There are facts, real-life, provable, undeniable facts that relate to our banking system and our tax policy. But facts are nonpartisan, and both parties can cite the same statistic and make it mean something entirely different. So before you vote, before you make a decision about which candidate is best suited to steer this country back to prosperity, try to wash away the red and blue paint and get down to the honest-to-goodness truth. If the economy is what decides your vote, make sure it's a real economy you're voting on, not some pundit's fantasy. And that's Your Vote 2012 for this time. Stay tuned to World Channel for our continuing coverage of the November election, and look for us online at worldchannel.org. I'm Celeste Headley from Washington. Goodbye.
Major funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.